Hi, and welcome to Tauros All Access. I'm Lauren Hill. This is Evan Epstein, and this is the Thursday edition of Tauros All Access, also known as the Weekend Preview.
Tauros coming off a weekend split against the Austin Bruins, and they're playing the Bruins once again, this time home here at the Pepsi Rink. A 3-1 victory last Friday, a tough 5-0 loss last Saturday, as we take a look at the Noodles numbers for this upcoming weekend.
Yeah, so last weekend, the Bruins were 3 for 8 on the power play. Tauros were 0 for 5. One of the Bruins' power play goals came on a 5-on-3, and last two series, the Tauros have been 1 for 12 on power play and 7 for 12 on the penalty kill.
And while special teams is usually one of the Tauros' strong points throughout the course of this season, they're one of the best teams in the league. It's been a little bit of a struggle over the past couple weeks. Tauros looking to reset on special teams this weekend against the Austin Bruins. This is a very physical team that's been able to pin up pucks, and the Tauros have really struggled to gain possession of pucks. Most of the last series was played in the Tauros defensive zone.
Yeah, we talked about it last week when we played the Bruins, actually before we played them on our pregame show, that the games plural could have gone either way of clean hockey and not so clean hockey. We saw both last weekend, and I think we're going to see both again this weekend with just how these two teams play each other. It is always very physical, especially when they are both competing for playoff positioning, number 2 and number 3. So I think it'll be another great series this weekend against the Austin Bruins, the Minotauros. But our Tauros gave up 97 shots on goal across the two games last weekend, and Tyler Ebner, our assistant coach, did say that they limited grade A opportunities on Friday, as well as the fact that they failed to do so on Saturday.
And I think the two things you just said go hand in hand with each other, right? 97 shots on goal. That is a big number that the Tauros don't usually give up. However, right, that comes because they held possession in the Tauros zone for most of the game. And while the Tauros did limit some of those top opportunities on Friday, that was very clear on Saturday where they crashed in on the net. They had a couple of good looks out in front. You mentioned the physicality, right? Not a lot of penalties called last series. And it's going to be interesting to see how the officials set the tone early on. If the Bruins continue to go to the box, then maybe they're going to need to change their game plan. But if not, then the Tauros need to respond with their physicality, with physicality of their own.
Yes, I agree. And then another great thing that happened last weekend, Middendorf's hat trick.
Right, that was the highlight of last weekend. Came on Friday. Really one of the two reasons the Tauros picked up the 3-1 win, along with Lucas Fedin's outrageous 50-save, 1-goal allowed performance. 2 breakaway goals in the second, followed by the empty netter in the third, to give Middendorf the hat trick, as I had the opportunity to catch up with Gavin Middendorf after practice this morning. I'm here with Gavin Middendorf. Gavin, on Friday against the Bruins, your first 2 goals came on breakaways. What type of mind games come into play when that play happens back-to-back times?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you're not really thinking about it. You're just hoping that the puck goes by the goalie at that point.
After a tough loss on Saturday, how should the Tauros regroup and try and rebound this weekend against the Bruins?
Yeah, I think we just got to stick to what we know. We're a great hockey team. If we can play a full game, we're good. We're good to go.
6 games left in the season. Tauros knotted at 79 points with the Bruins. How crucial are these 2 games this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, they're huge. I mean, we're all fighting for the top spot, but I mean, the second place team gets home at ice advantage, so it's always huge.
All right, thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.
And with that performance last Friday, Middendorf is now up to 32 goals and 50 points on the season. Yeah. He becomes the 6th Tauro to reach that 50th point mark. Really impressive what these top 2 lines have done for the Tauros.
Yes, I agree. And now we're going to take a look at the around the division to give you more of a whole circle view at what the Central Division is looking at right now. So the Bismarck Bobcats have won 7 straight games. They only need 4 more straight wins to clinch that number 1 seed in the Central Division.
And the Bobcats have been playing good hockey as of late. They've won 7 in a row. You mentioned 4 in a row is the number that they need to lock up that number 1 spot. They play the North Iowa Bulls this weekend and the Minnesota Mallards the weekend after. And if the Tauros want to stay in the race for that number 1 seed. They need the Bulls to pick up a win this weekend. Bulls have shown the ability to pick wins off the top teams in the division, but the Minnesota Mallards have lost 16 straight. So you can almost assume that the Bobcats will sweep the Mallards next weekend. But if the Bulls can take a game from the Bobcats, then the Toros control their own destiny once again for that first game. But of course, most importantly, Toros have to take care of business this weekend here against the Austin Bruins.
Yeah, not to sound like a broken record here, but this series is arguably the most important so far in this season for the Toros. Although the Toros would like the Bobcats to overtake them for the number 1 seed, the home ice in the first playoff series would be ideal for us. Like you mentioned, the Mallards have lost 16 straight, so the Bruins' last 4 being against the Mallards and the Bulls. Also, the Bulls have been able to show that they can pick off a top seed team. So I think this weekend in general is just going to be really interesting for the Central Division.
Right, and you mentioned the opponents that the Bulls play, that the Bruins play. That makes it so important for the Toros not just to pick up a split this weekend, but they really need 4. While the Toros do have the tiebreaker in terms of points, which is wins, over the Bruins, you split this weekend, and then there's no room for error for the Toros with 4 games against the Wings and the Bobcats to finish off the year. Now, that's certainly doable, but the best way for the Toros to lock up home ice in that first playoff series is to pick up 4 points this weekend.
And we would love to have you here this weekend for us to pick up those 4 points. So it's important to have a full barn for the rest of the season, our regular season. So we are only home this weekend, so 2 games this weekend, and then we have a split home and home with Bismarck April 11th and 12th. So we are home that Friday game, and then we are in Bismarck that Saturday game. So please scan this QR code over here. Get your tickets for this weekend if you haven't already, and then that April 11th game. We would love to have you. It's important for not only us on Tauros All Access and Grace behind the camera, it's important for our players to have you here, our coaches, literally everybody wants you here. So please buy tickets. You can also find merchandise within this link and also anything else you could ever need, from like booster club information to if you're curious on the roster or whatever, it's all in there. So please scan that, get tickets. Again, please be here this weekend, and that'll do it for today's episode of Tauros All Access, and we can't wait to see you this weekend.